Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Have you ever heard a legend so wild that it made you wonder, could that actually be true? Well, sometimes the line between myth and reality is pretty blurry. In this video, I'll dive into myths that sound like pure fantasy but have surprising roots in real life. So get comfortable as we uncover the truth behind some of history's most legendary stories. The Lost City of the Monkey God. Deep in the heart of the Honduran rainforest, a legend has persisted for centuries of a lost city, one dedicated to a mysterious monkey god. It goes by a couple different names, most commonly known as the Lost City of the Monkey God and La Ciudad Blanca, or in English, the White City. This place was said to be decorated with imposing pillars made of white stone, hence White City. Adventurers searched and searched for this city, but they never found any trace of it. In the 1940s, the first traces of the lost city were found by American explorer Theodore Mord. Mord embarked on an expedition to the La Mosquitia region of Honduras. When he spoke to the locals, he was told about a massive statue that had been buried deep in the jungle by a mysterious pre-Columbian civilization. The statue was of a huge benevolent monkey god that they worshipped. Legend goes that the city was filled with wealth, but also cursed. Those who entered the city would become ill and die. Perhaps it was the monkey god trying to protect its lost city. Some explorers who searched for the city contracted leishmaniasis, a parasitic disease transmitted by the bite of sandflies. The disease causes a flesh-eating parasite to migrate to the mucous membranes of the mouth and the nose, which can lead to disfigurement. That's really disgusting. When Mord returned, he had an exciting story to tell. He claimed to have found this magnificent mythical city shining white in the jungle and brought back thousands of artifacts. Ever since Mord's initial discovery, La Ciudad Blanca has been on the minds of archaeologists, explorers, and scientists alike. Future teams went back to the jungle to search, but no one ever found the place from Mord's story. Everything changed in 2015 when a group of scientists discovered ancient ruins deep in the jungle. Filmmaker and explorer Steve Elkins was part of the team that found the ruins in 2015. He recorded their entire journey through the Honduran rainforest and has since released a documentary called Lost City of the Monkey God. It aired in October of 2021 on the Science Channel. Elkins' fascination with the lost city began in the 1990s, but it took him all those years to find. He first heard stories about it while he was working as a television producer. Curious, he started traveling to Honduras when he could, looking for any proof of the city. His fascination turned into an obsession. He was finally able to get a group of explorers together, and what they found was shocking. According to Elkins, they were up in the mountains surrounded by thick vegetation when they happened upon a giant boulder with a petroglyph etched onto it. What do you think this image showed? A figure, a symbol, an animal? Pause the video and take a guess. The petroglyph showed a man wearing either a mask or a helmet. In one hand, he's holding a stick, and in the other was a sack with what appeared to be seeds spilling out of it. This struck Elkins as irrefutable proof that in the past, there must have been human settlements in the area. After all, the vegetation there was so dense you could hardly see 20 feet in front of you. So why would anyone in modern times travel all that way just to draw some random picture on a rock? As the years went by, the team uncovered even more evidence of a lost city. In 2012, Elkins uncovered what could have been the location of an ancient city using LiDAR. He found a massive depression in the Honduran rainforest, surrounded by towering mountains. A survey plane then flew over the area with special lasers that pinged off the ground under the trees, revealing hidden structures beneath the jungle canopy. With this information, Elkins and his team were able to create a digital 3D map of the site with the tree cover removed, showing more clearly what had been hidden. In 2013, building foundations, roads, canals, and agricultural terraces began to take shape. Could this have been the legendary lost city of the monkey god? That's exactly what Elkins wanted to find out, so he journeyed to the site on foot in 2015 to see for himself. Avoiding quicksand, flesh-eating bacteria, venomous snakes, and swarms of hungry insects, the explorers hiked to the remote site. And guess what? Their hard work paid off. The team found ancient plazas, mounds, vessels featuring snakes and vultures, and even a pyramid. What's more incredible was at the base of this pyramid, a cache of sculptures made of stone were unearthed. The artifacts recovered were dated to between 1000 and 1400 AD. So was there any sign of the actual monkey god statue? Unfortunately, no, but excavations are still ongoing, which means evidence of it could turn up any day now. Elkins is convinced that this is the fabled White City, and that there could be even more civilizations waiting to be uncovered in the area. The terror bird. Small animals get carried away by large birds all the time. It's the way of the natural world. But a bird large enough to swoop down and grab a full-grown man? This must be a mythological beast. This terror bird was once a threat to the Maori people of New Zealand's South Island, and they called it Puakai. According to the Maori, Puakai, whose name means old glutton, was unlike any other bird they had encountered before. It was a massive creature, feared by all, that would swoop down from its nest on Mount Torlese to snatch men, women, and children alike. Its powerful wings caused a mighty rush of air that struck terror into the hearts of anyone who heard it. No one could escape its deadly talons. The legend takes a turn, however, when a warrior named Te Hao Tawera arrived on the island and learned of the people's suffering. He was determined to put an end to the fearsome bird, so he devised a clever plan. With 50 armed men, he stealthily approached the mountain at night and set up a large trap made of manuka saplings. As dawn broke, Tawera courageously lured the giant bird out of its nest. Puakai, seeing its next meal, swooped down to eat him, but the warrior managed to dash into the trap just in time. The 50 hidden men then sprang out and speared the giant bird to death, finally putting an end to its reign of terror. While this story may sound like pure legend, it might actually be a faint memory of a real creature, the Haast eagle, the largest eagle to have ever lived. This formidable bird had a wingspan of up to 10 feet. It was also powerful enough to bring down the moa, the giant flightless birds that could weigh anywhere from 220 to 550 pounds. Imagine a bird that could strike with the force of a rifle bullet. Now that is something to fear. The Haast's eagle likely left a deep impression on the minds of the early Maori. After all, this was a bird that specialized in hunting large prey, so it might have even mistaken some humans for its usual meals. Unlike other birds in New Zealand, the Haast's eagle was a top predator that wasn't scared of anything. The connection between the legend and the real bird became clearer when bones of the Haast's eagle were discovered in New Zealand. The first of these discoveries happened in 1871. A taxidermist named Frederick Richardson Fuller was overseeing the excavation of moa bones from a swamp. Among the moa remains, Fuller found smaller bones that he recognized as belonging to a giant bird of prey. This discovery led to the identification of the Haast's eagle. Although the Haast's eagle is now extinct, its legacy lives on in Maori legend and in the remains found in swamps and caves. The bones tell the story of a bird that once ruled the skies of New Zealand, a creature that likely inspired the tale of Puakai. The eagle was so formidable that even after its extinction, its memory remained etched in the minds of the people, passed down through generations in the form of legends and stories. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a huge thank you to Unintended Consequence and Arty Party for supporting this channel. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we wouldn't be here without support from you all. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Viking Sunstones. If you had a magic stone that could take you anywhere you wanted to go, where would you travel to? For centuries, Viking Sunstones were thought to be the stuff of legends, a magical crystal that could help navigate the seas even when the sun was hidden by clouds. It could take you to entirely new lands. Described in ancient Norse sagas, the Sunstone was said to reveal the sun's position, making it a crucial tool for seafaring Vikings who were renowned for their incredible navigational skills. For a long time, though, there was little evidence to suggest that these mystical stones were real. Until now. Researchers have finally found solid proof that these legendary sunstones might have actually existed. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A cloudy crystal discovered in the wreck of an Elizabethan ship that sank off the Channel Islands in 1592. Scientists from the University of Rennes in Brittany believe this crystal, known as Iceland spar, could be the same type of stone the Vikings used to navigate the seas. This particular crystal was found alongside navigational tools like dividers, suggesting that it was part of the ship's navigational equipment. While there is no historical record of Elizabethan sailors using sunstones, this discovery hints that they may have used these crystals in a similar way to the Vikings. The magic of the sunstone comes from its ability to split sunlight into two rays, even on cloudy or foggy days, the kind of weather that Viking sailors often faced. By turning the crystal until the two rays of light lined up perfectly, sailors could find the sun's position with amazing accuracy. They could do this even when the sun was hidden below the horizon. This would have been a game changer for navigation, especially before the invention of the magnetic compass. But who needs a compass when you've got a magic crystal? The lack of intact sunstones in Viking burial sites might be explained by the fact that many Viking warriors were cremated, which would have destroyed these delicate crystals. However, fragments of this special crystal have recently been found in Viking settlements in Iceland. This discovery supports the idea that these legendary sunstones were more than just myths. They were real tools that helped Vikings navigate the treacherous seas. Amazon warrior women. What if I told you that Wonder Woman could have been a real person? That might not have been her real name, and she probably didn't possess godlike strength or have magical bracelets, but women like her may have really been around. In ancient Greek legends, the Amazons were fierce warrior women. They were feared and respected for their skills in battle. These fabled women lived on the edges of the known world, where they rode horses, wielded bows, and fought as viciously as any man. Hercules had to face the Amazon queen Hippolyte to obtain her magic girdle, and Achilles fell in love with another Amazon queen, Penthesilea, after he tragically killed her in battle. He didn't expect to see such a beautiful face behind her helmet. For a long time, people thought these stories were just myths, but recent archaeological discoveries are revealing that these warrior women might have actually existed. In Azerbaijan, excavations at a 4,000-year-old burial site uncovered the remains of women buried with weapons like arrowheads, daggers, and even a mace. All of these would have been tools of the trade for any ancient warrior. These finds suggest that these women might have been the real-life Amazons, living and fighting in a male-free society as the legends describe. Historian Bethany Hughes, who has studied these findings, says they give truth to the old Greek myths. And guess what? The evidence isn't just from Azerbaijan. In Russia in 2019, archaeologists found 4 female warriors buried with their weapons. In Armenia, the remains of a woman with an arrowhead in her leg were discovered in 2017. Even in the early 1990s, a woman buried with a dagger was found near Kazakhstan. These women were clearly warriors, with their bones showing signs of extensive horseback riding and the repetitive use of bows and arrows. Some of these women also wore carnelian necklaces, a sign of high status. These necklaces were often associated with priestesses or goddesses. Hughes points out that these findings are not just isolated incidents. They suggest a widespread culture of warrior women across the Caucasus and the steppe. In her documentary series, Bethany Hughes' Treasures of the World, Hughes visits the remote mountain village of Kinalig in the Greater Caucasus. There, locals share their stories of their ancestors, women who disguised themselves as men to fight. They hint that these legendary warriors were more than just a myth. They were real, living and fighting thousands of years ago. The Lake of Bones. Would you ever visit a place known as Skeleton Lake? It doesn't sound very inviting, does it? You might picture hundreds of bones submerged beneath the surface. And hey, you'd be right. But who did these bones belong to? Nestled high in India's Trishul Mountains lies a chilling yet beautiful spot known as Rupkund Lake, or Skeleton Lake. This high-altitude glacial lake, situated about 16,400 feet above sea level, is only around 500 square feet and just about 6 to 8 feet deep. Surrounded by towering peaks, the lake is often hidden under ice and snow, making it quite the mysterious place. Skeleton Lake earned its eerie nickname from the hundreds of human skeletons that emerge when the ice melts, revealing a gruesome scene from the past. The skeletons were discovered in the 1940s by a British forest officer who was exploring the area. According to his account, some of the skeletons still had flesh attached. This sight was so frightening that it sent his co-workers fleeing, convinced they had stumbled upon a ghostly land. At first, there was wild speculation about these remains, with theories ranging from a failed Japanese invasion during World War II to a ritual sacrifice by Indian warriors. The real story, as it turns out, is both tragic and fascinating. Many believe that the skeletons are the remains of a large group of people who died in a violent hailstorm around the 9th century. The storm was so fierce that it completely battered the group. These men and women were likely part of a royal pilgrimage led by a king, but they clearly did something wrong to make the gods angry. Local legends tell of the goddess Nanda Devi unleashing this deadly storm in anger at the king's disrespect. But what exactly did he do that was so terrible? Well, this tale is deeply intertwined with local mythology. The area is sacred in Hindu beliefs, with the nearby mountains named after the deities in the Hindu pantheon. According to one myth, the goddess Parvati was drinking from a lake when she saw her reflection. This led to the lake being named Rupkund, meaning Beauty Lake. Another version tells of the goddess striking the ground with a trident to create the mountains and the lakes. The king Raja Jazdaval was aware of how sacred the area was, and yet it's said that he brought with him a lavish entourage, including entertainers and dancers. It was more of a party than a pilgrimage, which showed a lack of reverence for the goddess, and so she sent a storm to punish him. Scientific studies have supported the idea that the skeletons were victims of a catastrophic hailstorm. Holes were found in many of the skulls. Some of the hailstones would have been as large as 9 inches in diameter, so there was no way anyone survived out in the open. Research has shown that the bones belong to 2 distinct groups of people, suggesting they might have been pilgrims or refugees from different places and even time periods. These severe hailstorms have proven deadly to many people trying to make the journey over the centuries. The gods must be quite angry here. Every 12 years, a major pilgrimage called the Nanda Devi Rajjat takes place, passing near Skeleton Lake. This ritual trek, spanning 22 days and 186 miles, symbolizes the goddess's return home, with thousands of pilgrims braving the dangerous route. Sadly, many lives have been lost along this path over the centuries, adding to the dark history of the lake. Zalin, the legendary shield. In the rich tapestry of Norse mythology, filled with gods, giants, and cosmic wonders, there is a legendary shield known as Zalin. This mystical shield isn't just any ordinary piece of armor. It's said to protect the earth from the sun's fiery rays. Zalin, often called the cooling shield, acts as a barrier between the blazing sun and the world below, safeguarding life from the sun's scorching heat. Sound familiar? At the center of Norse cosmology is Yggdrasil, the world tree, which connects the 9 realms, including Midgard, the realm of mortals. Midgard is surrounded by a vast sea and guarded by gods and mythical beings. Above this realm, the sun and the moon travel across the sky, bringing light and warmth. But in Norse mythology, the sun is more than just a bright object in the sky. It's a divine chariot driven by the goddess Sol. Her light blesses the earth, but if left unchecked, it could also bring destruction. That's why Zalin was created, the shield that stands between the world and the sun's full power. But Zalin is more than just a shield. It symbolizes balance and moderation in nature. The sun represents both life-giving warmth and the potential for chaos. Zvalin's existence reminds mortals of the delicate balance needed to maintain harmony in the world. This protective shield also reflects the Norse people's deep connection to nature and their understanding of the cosmic forces that govern life. Today, Zalin might be seen as a symbol for the ozone layer, which protects us from the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation. The ozone layer, like Zalin, acts as a shield, ensuring that life on Earth isn't scorched by the sun. The fact that the Norse people had a myth about a protective shield long before science revealed the ozone layer is both fascinating and mysterious. How could they have known about this invisible shield? Perhaps they understood more about the world than we give them credit for. Or maybe it's just another example of how mythology and science sometimes align in surprising ways. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. The giant squid. Imagine you're sailing on a fishing boat, surrounded on all sides by nothing but blue waves for miles, when all of a sudden you see a large shadow appear beneath the vessel. It grows in size as it gets closer and closer until finally you see one of its limbs peek out of the water. One limb turns into 8 as they begin to embrace your ship in a terrifying hug. Before you know it, you're in the water, face to face with the sea monster. Today, they are simply known as giant squids. The giant squid, a creature of legends and nightmares, has long fascinated humanity with its monstrous appearance and mysterious nature. For centuries, sailors and fishermen told tales of enormous, tentacled sea monsters that could drag ships to the ocean's depths. These stories, like the infamous kraken of Norwegian and Greenlandic folklore, painted the squid as a terrifying beast, capable of sinking ships and snatching sailors from the decks. The kraken was said to be so massive that it could stretch up to 1.5 miles across. Its only warning sign would be a sudden surge of fish fleeing to the surface, terrified by the approaching monster. And it turns out these stories weren't just figments of sailors' imaginations. There was more truth to these legends than we thought. Real-life giant squids do exist, and they are every bit as fascinating as the myths suggest, though perhaps not as terrifying. The giant squid can grow between 40 to 50 feet long, which is about the length of 4 cars lined up bumper to bumper. That's still pretty massive if you think about it, even if it's not quite kraken-sized. Over the years, dead giant squids have occasionally washed ashore, with their rubbery bodies sometimes stretching out even longer in the sun. These carcasses, along with giant beaks found inside sperm whale stomachs, helped scientists piece together the mystery of the giant squid. Despite their impressive size, these creatures are elusive, living in the deep, dark parts of the ocean where humans rarely venture. This has made studying them quite a challenge, and much about them remains unknown. What we do know is that, interestingly, all giant squids around the world seem to be genetically similar, suggesting that there is only one species of these enormous cephalopods. They are found in every non-polar ocean, providing a critical food source for sperm whales. This means there must be millions of them out there, even if we don't see them very often. Unlike their legendary counterparts, giant squids aren't known to be aggressive towards humans. They are more interested in hunting their prey, using their long tentacles to grab and slowly eat their food. However, they have to be careful not to take too big of a bite. Why? Because their esophagus passes through their brain. Swallowing something too large could actually cause brain damage. So, thankfully, boats and sailors are off the menu for these not-so-little critters. The Fires of Queensland. When a story survives for millennia, it must be one heck of a story, or at least have some truth to it, don't you think? Otherwise, it would be easily forgotten. For 7,000 years, the Gugubadun people of northern Queensland have passed down tales that seem straight out of a disaster movie. These stories, older than the written records of Egypt or Mesopotamia, have survived across 230 generations. They tell of a time when destruction rained down from the skies. One of the Gugubadun legends tells of the land catching fire along the rivers, while another describes a powerful witch doctor who created a pit in the ground, causing dust to fill the air. The dust was so thick that people got lost and died in it. For centuries, these stories were considered just that, legends meant to explain the unexplainable. But recent research suggests that these myths might be more than just tales. Scientists from Australia and Scotland have been studying the Kinrara volcano in Queensland, which last erupted around 7,000 years ago. When they compared the timeline of the eruption with the ancient stories, the parallels were striking. The descriptions of blazing earth and deadly dust could very well be accounts of the volcanic eruption. Dr. Benjamin Cohen, one of the researchers, pointed out that the Kinrara eruption sent lava flows down the river valleys for miles. This likely created a scene that must have looked like the Earth itself was burning. The ash and lava fountains from the crater could easily explain the tales of dust and death, possibly caused by noxious gases or ash suffocation. While the team can't definitively prove that these stories are about the Kinrara eruption, they struggle to find another event that fits so perfectly. This discovery adds to a growing list of natural events like sea level rises and meteor showers that Indigenous Australians may have recorded in their oral traditions. The researchers believe that these stories could hold even more clues about ancient volcanic eruptions. But what do you think? What other truths could be hidden in these Aboriginal myths? Let me know in the comments. The mystery of Milky Seas. Imagine sailing through the deep, dark ocean on a moonless night when suddenly the water around your ship starts to glow. It looks like a ghostly sea of milk. This mesmerizing and mysterious phenomenon, known as Milky Seas or Mareal, has captivated sailors for centuries. In the days before science could explain this eerie glow, sailors spun all kinds of wild tales. Some believed the glowing waters were caused by sea monsters lurking beneath the waves, while others thought it was the work of enchanting mermaids. These stories found their way into famous adventure novels like Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Herman Melville's Moby Dick. The books describe this marvel as just another strange tale of the high seas. But that's not all it is. Researchers spent decades searching for proof of this rare marine phenomenon with little success. It was too good to be true, they must have thought. But everything changed in 2019 when Milky Seas were documented for the first time off the coast of Java. Before then, scientist Stephen Miller's research relied only on maritime lore and satellite imagery. Miller was contacted by Naomi McKinnon, a crew member of the sailing ship Ganesha. She claimed to have witnessed, along with the rest of the crew, the ocean glowing mysteriously. They had no idea what they had stumbled upon at first. It was only when they shared pictures of the event with Miller that they realized they had experienced something extremely rare. In fact, the photos captured by the crew of the Ganesha, revealing the eerie glow of the Milky Seas, are believed to be the first of their kind. But what causes this surreal sight? It turns out the truth is just as fascinating as the legends. Milky Seas are vast areas of water that light up at night, not because of moonlight, but due to bioluminescence, light produced by living organisms. The main culprits? Tiny bioluminescent bacteria that glow when they reach a certain population density, a process known as quorum sensing. When billions of these bacteria gather in one place, their combined light can turn the ocean into a glowing, otherworldly scene. One interesting idea is that these bacteria gather in large groups on the water's surface, aided by organic material from phytoplankton blooms. When the conditions are just right, the bacteria reach the critical concentration needed to light up the sea. And unlike other glowing sea creatures that use their light to scare off predators, these bacteria have a different goal. They want to be eaten. Their glow attracts fish, and once inside a fish's gut, the bacteria find the perfect home to thrive. Charlie No-Face. In the 1950s and 60s, Western Pennsylvania was home to a spooky legend about a mysterious figure known as the Green Man, or Charlie No-Face. According to the eerie tales, this strange man was said to roam the dark, remote streets with a ghastly appearance, glowing green from being struck by lightning or injured in some horrific accident. The legend painted him as a ghostly figure haunting places like South Park or the North Hills. The rumor caused quite a stir among locals and, of course, high school kids. I mean, what would you do if a man with no face appeared to you in the dead of night? Would you run? Hide? Pee your pants? Maybe a combination of all three? But here's what people didn't understand. The Green Man, or Charlie No-Face, was not just a figure of local folklore. He was a real person named Raymond Robinson. The story behind Robinson's appearance is both heartbreaking and fascinating. In 1919, when Raymond was just 8 years old, he had a horrifying accident. While trying to reach a bird's nest at the top of an electrical pole, he was hit with a massive 11,000 volts of electricity. The shock was so severe that it burned away his face and arms, leaving him without eyes or nose. All that remained were holes where they used to be. Despite this life-altering trauma, Raymond stayed surprisingly upbeat and could still hear and talk. For the next 65 years, Robinson lived a reclusive life in Coppell, Pennsylvania. He stayed mostly indoors, making handmade belts, wallets, and doormats to sell for modest income. But he did venture out for late-night walks, trying to avoid frightening others with his appearance. This is where the legend of the Green Man began. High school students would spot him walking along State Route 351, and that's when the eerie tales of the glowing, faceless figure began to spread. The name Green Man likely came from the way that car headlights reflected off his clothing in the dark. Some locals remember seeing Raymond during these nighttime strolls and felt a mix of fear and curiosity. One resident recalled being so frightened by Robinson's appearance that she nearly drove off the road. Others were kinder, offering him beers and cigarettes or simply chatting with him. Though Robinson faced some cruel pranks, like being driven to unfamiliar places, many people saw him as friendly and interesting. He passed away in 1985, but the legend of Charlie No-Face remains a vibrant part of local folklore. As Marie Werner of former local notes, the legend is still strong. Thanks for watching! Which of these was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know if you want to see more videos like this. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.
Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. The ancient city of Myra. The city of Myra was once a powerful port on the Mediterranean, but it was forgotten and lost in the 13th century until 2009, when it was discovered again in Turkey. It was here that a bishop named Nicholas made the city into a Christian capital in the ancient world. You might know him better as Saint Nicholas, aka Santa Claus. This ancient city goes back thousands of years, but nobody knows exactly when the city was first founded. The first mention of Myra appears in the 1st century BC as one of the cities of the Lycian League. However, historians believe it goes back at least an additional 400 years. Lycia was a region in modern Anatolia that had a great sway in ancient times. Lycia was also the first democratic union ever created and was home to many classical writers. For 800 years, it was a very important pilgrimage site in the Byzantine Empire, and they were known for their riches, art, and architecture, which also made them very appealing to foreign invaders, such as the Persians, the Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Romans. Rather than submit, they banded together and formed the Lycian League, one of the first democracies in the world. It had all the cities in Lycia vote for a representative, which would then vote at a yearly council. The largest cities, including Myra, got 3 votes. Nicholas became an important power player in the Roman Empire, converting the Greco-Roman temples into Christian ones. He was appointed archbishop by Emperor Constantine, and he was known for his generosity and for performing miracles, such as saving a ship from sinking and bringing a drowned sailor back to life. However, over the years, the city was plagued by invasions and disease. There were Persian attacks, Muslim raids, plagues, earthquakes, and even flash floods. By the 11th century, Myra was completely abandoned. There is not much remaining today of the amazing architecture that made Myra great. The temple of the goddess Artemis, said to be the most impressive building in the entire region, is completely gone. Though there are some ruins still standing, like the granary built by Emperor Hadrian of Rome on a visit in 131 AD, which archaeologists have studied extensively. The city was eventually covered in 18 feet of mud from the rampaging nearby river. However, thanks to new technology, it is slowly reappearing as archaeologists have found an entire chapel almost perfectly preserved. Nearby, there is another building and another. Now it looks like the original city might be largely intact underground, and archaeologists can probably find the city under the mud just how it was like in Pompei. Mini Pompei. Speaking of Pompei, experts excavating an old building in the Italian city of Verona have discovered what they described as a miniature Pompei. The building wasn't destroyed by a volcanic eruption or anything like that, but it is extremely well preserved, just like the famous city. The discovery was made in an old cinema that had been abandoned for the last 2 decades. While renovating the cinema, workers discovered frescoed walls underneath the modern structure that had been untouched for around 2,000 years. Archaeologists still aren't sure what kind of building the walls belong to, but it definitely dates back to the 2nd century. Judging by some structural damage, archaeologists were able to determine that the building had probably survived a vicious fire that caused its roof to collapse, and then it was just kind of built over as the centuries went on. But miraculously, the colorful artwork was never damaged through any of it. There is still hope for more information to come to light as the huge site is still being excavated. No bodies have been found yet, but there is still a lot more work to go. Archaeologists are hopeful they will figure out what the mysterious structure was used for and why its walls were painted so brilliantly. Lake Huron. A team of researchers from the University of Texas have recently uncovered stone tool artifacts inside Lake Huron that date back 9,000 years. And to make the discovery even more shocking, many of the stone tools were crafted from obsidian, which came from a quarry over 2,000 miles away in central Oregon. As of right now, these pieces of obsidian are the oldest of their kind ever found in the continental United States. They suggest a complicated social network across North America dating back to 10,000 years ago. Whoever mined the obsidian must have traded it all the way to where a mysterious group of people were living in the Lake Huron area. Underwater archaeologists also discovered traces of a settlement at the bottom of the lake. It's believed that during the last years of the Ice Age, ancient social groups of caribou hunters had built some kind of primitive settlement here using stone walls, at a time when Lake Huron was dry as a bone. Today, these remains are 100 feet underwater. A mysterious city. In Peru, experts have discovered a brand new pre-Hispanic archaeological site near the city of Cusco, never before explored by modern scientists. The archaeologists found the leftovers of stone walls built by the Inca, the ruins of a megalithic temple, and artifacts left behind by members of the relatively unknown Wari culture. The site is called Espiritu Pampa, according to the Decentralized Culture Directorate of Cusco. This is the state body in charge of conserving precious artifacts in the area. Archaeologists also uncovered tooth fragments from animals, a silver chest plate that may have been worn by a fearless warrior, ceramic vessels, and mysterious silver needles. They even found a silver crown and other forgotten pieces of jewelry. The most important building is the temple itself, which archaeologists believe was used by the Wari to perform rituals or as an astronomical observatory. But what's really strange is that traces of Inca culture were also found here, suggesting centuries after the Wari had vanished, the Inca moved into their abandoned city as they expanded throughout Peru. But just who were the Wari? They flourished between the years 600 and 1000, and they held dominance over a huge patch of land between the rainforest and the Andean highlands. They've even been referred to as the first great empire of ancient Peru. Their capital, Huari, was one of the first splendid cities in the entire world. But like a lot of old civilizations back then, centuries of persistent drought saw their numbers decline, and their civilization crumbled. The island of Hvar. Something strange was recently discovered on the Croatian island of Hvar. Archaeologists found traces of an old Greek settlement dating to around the 4th century AD, back when the whole area was populated by Greeks, who had recently taken it back from the Romans. But the island actually has a history that stretches back much further. The island has been continually inhabited since Neolithic times, though the Greeks were the first to settle on the island back in 385 BC. The Roman Empire eventually seized control of the area in 219 BC, and 900 years later, when their power had seriously diminished in the region, Slavic people arrived and took control of the island. Basically, the island of Hvar has had a long and brutal history. The recent archaeological dig took place in the gardens of a Croatian palace built here in the 17th century. Researchers were expecting to find artifacts related to the palace. What they found instead was an ancient necropolis filled with ceramic jars which themselves contained human remains. Researchers uncovered at least 20 graves in the necropolis and the skeletons of 32 people. They also found a piece of stone wall dating back about 1900 years. In typical Greek fashion, these tombs were flamboyant and exceptional. Many tombs were elaborate buildings with their own roofs and stone walls, with the most impressive skeletons being buried inside giant jars, almost like a human ship in a bottle, along with many, many grave goods. King Herod's tomb. King Herod the Great ruled over Judea from between 37 BC to 4 BC, and was known for his exceptional cruelty and tough rule, as well as his impressive building projects, including the fortress of Masada. He killed his sons and his wife and loved to confiscate property from those who did not support him. He is also a very important figure in the Bible. One of King Herod's most infamous acts was to murder every male baby in Bethlehem to prevent a prophecy from coming to life, in which the Messiah was to be born. There is no historical record of this happening other than what was written in the Gospel of Matthew, and nobody knows if it really happened. The search for his tomb became every archaeologist's obsession. Nobody knew where it was. By the late 1800s, finding the tomb was like searching for the Ark of the Covenant. In 1838, the American scholar Edward Robinson found Herodium, a huge fortified palace built by King Herod. The palace was discovered buried underneath a massive volcano-shaped earthen mound, only about 7 miles from Jerusalem. But throughout all the original excavations, nobody could find the actual resting place of the infamous king. It wasn't until 2007 that archaeologists finally unearthed a huge staircase leading down to a burial site. Within the burial site, they found a sarcophagus so lavishly decorated it must have been used for a king. The story made headlines around the world, with the London Daily saying, "A new discovery may solve the mystery of the Bible's bloodiest tyrant." But according to National Geographic, the tomb had already been pillaged and destroyed, probably on purpose by rebels. It is still up for debate on whether this was actually his real tomb, since there were no carvings or engravings mentioning his name. Others are still on the lookout. Jiahe. The archaeological site of Jiahe in China has been the source of great interest recently, as it contains evidence of some of the earliest people who ever lived in the Far East. Archaeologists have uncovered cultural and artistic remains such as advanced stone-cutting tools, kilns and pottery, unique housing structures, and musical flutes hollowed from bone. All the evidence points to a flourishing society that was shockingly advanced as far back as the Neolithic period. This site is unique among all ancient sites in the world. One of the main reasons is just how musical the old people of Jiahe were. Some archaeological sites in Europe have yielded a single musical instrument. Here, archaeologists have found 30 flutes, with 6 of them representing the earliest examples of usable musical instruments anywhere in the world. The flutes were crafted from the wing bones of exotic red-crowned cranes, with up to 8 holes capable of producing a wide variety of unique sounds. The Met Museum reports that Chinese myths known from nearly 6,000 years after the flutes were made tell of the cosmological importance of music and the association of flute playing and cranes. Experts believe the flutes were probably used in rituals and ceremonies, and they probably sounded better than most high school recorder sessions. To make the musical accomplishments at Jiahe even more impressive, keep in mind these flutes were crafted around 9,000 years ago, roughly 4,500 years before the ancient Egyptians were even established as we know them. Big Talbot Island. Excavations on Big Talbot Island in Florida have revealed traces of what could be a forgotten Native American settlement built by an extinct tribe. Researchers working with the University of North Florida believe they've uncovered the old city of Sarobay, a place originally spoken of by French and Spanish explorers in the 1560s. Dedicated historians have known about this mysterious city for a long time, but nobody has ever been able to find it. That is, until now. The archaeological team discovered a range of interesting artifacts on the island, including those of indigenous and European origins. For those not familiar with Florida, Big Talbot Island is just off the coast of Jacksonville. But just who lived on this island? It would have been a group of Native Americans known as the Mokama. They lived here during the 16th century. The ceramics found by the archaeological team date back to this time, as do the remains of smashed Spanish pottery. Judging by just how big the excavation site is, researchers say the island was much more than a small settlement and was probably a major community, at least until Europeans arrived in 1562. Less than 150 years later, the Mokama were gone, and their settlements were lost to history. Al-Ula. In northwestern Saudi Arabia, there is a region known as Al-Ula. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing but desert landscape, dry rocks, and mounds of dirt. But this is actually a place rich in archaeological treasures. Just recently, the remains of 11 humans and a dog were found buried inside a monumental tomb. The tomb itself dates back to 4,300 BC and was discovered thanks to satellite images and aerial photography. Because the region is so vast and inhospitable, one of the best ways for archaeologists to locate ancient sites is by using satellites and flyby missions. Over 6,000 years ago, this desert landscape was home to a village, and this village used the burial ground over a period of around 600 years. According to Melissa Kennedy, a professional researcher involved in the project, the tomb would have been clearly visible on the flat landscape as a large and prominent structure. But why exactly these people fled the desert, when they made their exodus, or if they simply died as their village turned to dust, nobody can say for sure. We don't even know what these ancient people were called. Shima. The archaeological site of Shima is one of the most mysterious in all of China. It was once a marvelous fortress city with 6 miles of high walls and a pyramid that stood 230 feet tall. Up until recently, nobody even knew this ancient city existed. For centuries, locals had just assumed the odd features were part of the nearby Great Wall. It wasn't until a few years ago that excavations got started and archaeologists realized they were dealing with a complex society that predates the oldest section of the Great Wall of China by 2,000 years. The people who lived and thrived in Shima did so 4,300 years ago, at least 5 centuries before the Chinese civilization had even reached the Central Plains. But just who were these people and how is this possible? According to National Geographic, Shima flourished for only 500 years, from between 2300 BC to 1800 BC. Then, for seemingly no reason, the city was abandoned and its people evaporated into thin air. There are absolutely no ancient texts to explain what happened here, at the biggest Neolithic settlement in all of China, a place 25% larger than Central Park in New York City. Archaeologists have found proof of human sacrifice, painted murals, artifacts crafted out of jade, and much, much more. And yet nobody knows where these people came from or where they went. Just recently, archaeologists uncovered 70 relief sculptures etched into stone depicting serpents, monsters, and unbelievable beasts that nobody can even recognize. Still, there is no clue as to what happened to Shima or its people. Thanks for watching! Which of these ancient sites would you like to visit? What's your favorite historical place? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time for more archaeological discoveries. Bye!